Hey there, today we'll be going over how to get started with C4 and covering the two most important parts, capacity and rating solutions. First, log in using your email address as a username and the password you created when signing up. If you haven't already added additional users, you can do so by going to your settings menu at the top right, select Manage Users, and inviting your team by entering their email address. At this point, they'll get a link to register with C4. Now let's configure a few things under your account settings. You can choose your landing page, pointing to the page you'd like to open when you log in. Most users just go with capacity or projects. Next, you'll want to set your target margin. This will impact what margin populates when you're building your projects. Toggle on display annual volume and probability to get the most out of the project's feature. The characteristics and attributes are used to affect project priorities based on what you care about. If load volume is important to you, then just drag and drop that attribute to rank with the highest priority. We'll revisit project settings in a later video. Now let's take a look at what's next. This is the project screen that will hold all of your opportunities. You can import multiple at a time or build them as you go. Start by entering a lane that maybe you're struggling with. Select the trailer type, add your customer name, and select the stage live if it's a lane that's currently running, in this example of South Carolina to California. Next, enter what you're paying on this lane, in this case $3,300. Here's where a cross calculation tool will adjust your max buys based on your target margin set in your account settings. If I adjust my margin by, let's say, 2 points up to 14, then my new max buy will adjust down to $3,225. Giving you a guideline of where you need to be when reaching out to new carriers to hit your margin goals. Fill in the rest of the details like volume, packaging, and if you have it, shipper and receiving notes so you can quickly pitch your opportunities to carriers. Think of projects as a foundation for your old bids, awards, and even current freight that you're moving today. Projects keeps your load consistencies in one area where your TMS will hold the variables like pickup times and dates. If you'd like, you can also assign this to someone else on your team. Now let's get into the project details. The first thing you'll notice is your annualized volume. When you're reaching out to new carriers and pitching volume by saying you have over 150 loads a year, you're able to paint a much better picture for carriers to really hone in on that extra 2% margin to drive your carrier relationships. You'll also notice the revenue stream and be able to prioritize if you should be working on something that's, in this case, over $500,000 or something smaller, depending on what you're looking for. You can also add notes to your projects if there's something ongoing like PPE gear. After you've built your project, we can start matching carriers. It's important that projects come first so you can keep a record of relevant information in one place. You can sort this list by the best match score that ties in the specific lane each carrier runs and the deadhead limits relative to your search, as well as the frequency for how often a carrier runs this lane. You can sort by frequency when you're looking for daily carriers, or haul direction if you're trying to find someone in the area with head haul or a more cost-sensitive solution with backhaul. Once we've mapped your carriers, you'll also be able to sort by just those that are set up with you for quicker targets when you're building your carrier base. If for some reason there's a mistake in contact info while you're reaching out to carriers, you can quickly edit their name or phone number. As you're going through, you can add in a recap of your conversation, like if you reached the carrier, if it was a 1 or 5 star conversation, and if they had capacity. Not all the time will you be using C4 to find a specific truck, but more so to develop carriers. Next, you can add a quick recap of what happened so anyone on your account can see the activity done and you're not stepping on each other's toes. You can add a quick note, or even go to the carrier's full profile to view all their lanes, equipment, and even more lane-specific notes, so you're not having to write things down and eventually you can toss those sticky notes. Clicking the Back to Results button at the top right will bring you back to the carrier matches. So let's shift back to adding these carriers to projects. If a carrier has any notes stored, you'll see a counter next to the Notes button. Let's say Quality Logistics was a carrier I wanted to work with. You can assign them by clicking the Add to Project button and toggling them on or off the project you're working on. We can do the same for OFO Express and a few other carriers, so you're not having to comb through a list of 200. Because now you'll have that pocket list of your top 5 or 10 go-to carriers. As your loads are posted out there and carriers call in, you can access over 500,000 carriers in C4 by using the quick search tool at the top right to build your list of prospect carriers. Let's say Warm-Up Express calls in. Quickly find them here, add a note, and add them to the project, letting them know you'll give them a call next time, just in case they didn't quite work out for whatever load you had posted. Now when you come back to projects, you can search by a few things, like your customer name, who it's assigned to, stage, or just typing in the outbound project name, in this case, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Select your project and click the Options button. Now you'll see all your procured carriers that you called, the ones that called in, or even add carriers that are currently hauling this lane for you to have a more robust project profile. Here's where you can store rates from each carrier and see how they're impacting your project overall. Ideally, you've moved a few shipments with your procured carriers. They'll know you, you'll know them, and the relationship starts to grow. You can automate your follow-up by clicking the Check Capacity button and email your procured carriers instead of emailing them one at a time. If a carrier replies, all that communication gets forwarded right back to your inbox to interact with. If you're more task-oriented, you can create tasks for each carrier with what you're trying to do. Set due dates and the carrier you need to reach, as well as assign that task to the right person or yourself. When the task is completed or in progress, you can set that action here, as well as see any that you've already completed in the past, giving you more of a CRM feel for carrier management to stay ahead of that capacity. So now let's talk about rating. A more common approach that fits your day-to-day operations is maybe when you might just be looking for rates. Start with the capacity screen, run your lane search, and select the date. Depending on high or low volume lanes, the rates we show will forecast differently if we're expecting bigger swings in the market. There are a few ways to get rates for whether you're bidding on new freight or actually booking with carriers to make sure you don't end upside down on a load. The current rates shown factors in trends, seasonality, weekends, and Tuesdays over Fridays, along with a few other variables to give you a current cost. If you come down to recent transactions, you can scale the amount of loads you see by scaling the deadhead limits to the left. This will also impact your carrier results, so be cautious. When you click Expand, you can see what these transactions moved for and when they picked up, to help guide you with what end of the range you'll be on, whether it's higher or lower. With today being November the 5th, we can see that this shipment just picked up 3 days ago and is likely still in transit. So you're able to see what this lane is running for as it was picked up instead of 7 or maybe even 14 days after it's been delivered. Of course, the best way to find out a true cost is to actually reach out to carriers that run this lane daily and aren't as, let's say, opportunistic as load board carriers, where you can take that cost back to your customer and add appropriate margin. Don't forget to add your notes. As you come across different lanes and using C4, we really value your feedback on where our pricing was and if it was useful or not. If you didn't see it so helpful, let us know by clicking no, selecting if our rate was too high, what your actual cost was, and maybe even where you're getting data from. On the other hand, if the rate we showed was good, simply click spot on. If you happen to have any questions, feel free to use the chat box at the bottom right, and our customer support team will be right with you. For more in-depth sessions on projects, carriers, and rating, visit our website or stay tuned for more videos as they're released. Thanks for listening in, and don't forget to start with projects.